If you followed competitive MKX in any capacity, you'll know that the general community agreed opinion is that Triborg is a top 5 character. Sektor and Smoke are incredibly reliable, with fantastic tools, with Cyrax and Cybersub being less fundamentally strong, but they excel in other areas like mix-up or mobility, for example. However, what some of you might not know is that this character went through a fair amount of changes across basically every single variation. The Triborg that we got on launch was nowhere near the character that we've all come to understand now. This video is to highlight what used to be, with all 4 variations, from Cybersub Zero and his absolute insanity in the corner, to Cyrax mix-ups that put Summoner Quan to shame, to buggy-looking Sektor missile setups, and more. To do this, I did a fresh install of the disc release of MKXL on my Xbox. No internet connection during install meant I had the version of the game that was on the disc, aka the very first version of Triborg the public ever got access to. Before I even dive into variations at all, Triborg universally had pretty insane frames in general. Whether it's startup frames, on-hit plus frames, it was pretty insane. Here's a few examples before we get started. Back 1 was a lot faster on startup, 18 frames to be specific. This means the mix between overhead and back 3 low was pretty much a totally true 50-50. But speaking of the low, back 3 was 11 frames on startup and not the 16 frames it is now. This overhead low mix was much more devastating back when Triborg first came out. 1112 had faster recovery, so using it against an airborne opponent let you set up things faster. This was really important for some variations, and I'll get into that soon. This is the absolute basic, but there were a lot of plus frames in other areas universally too, but I think it was more appropriate for me to go over those in the variations that could capitalize on them the absolute most. And, speaking of variations, I'd say it's time to go over these Borgs one by one, so let's get started. I guess for me, it makes sense to start with my favorite character, because I'm biased like that. But the Sektor variation was pretty different at first, and I'd go as far to say even had a much different approach, or meta, to it. Nowadays, the safety alone makes Sektor a neutral monster with gaps that aren't that punishing, really. But before, this character was a lot more range dependent and had a lot more setup potential, making the character very similar to how I played him in Mortal Kombat 9. A lot of strings and attacks that Sektor had contained gaps. Those gaps exist to this day, but it's not as punishing as it was back then either. You had to be way more careful over what attacks you used and when, because something like forward 2-1-2 was a full combo if they interrupted you, instead of a simple knockdown that it tends to be these days thanks to almost no launching armor existing anymore. That was the basic though. Launch Sektor wasn't as fundamentally strong as he is now. Sektor had to move more of a hit and run style with a large emphasis on keep away, but when we're talking about his missiles, this is where things got absolutely ridiculous for him at a very early stage, and why he was seen as more of a setup character. The first thing he could do was a variation of other Borg setups thanks to the quick recovery of 1112. On the ground, it's okay, but in MKX, certain attacks would have an extended knockdown if it connected while the opponent was airborne. 1112's knockdown frames in the corner set up for a free up missile or homing missile. The opponent had to hold this as they stood up, and Sektor could meaty with different attacks to even armor break wake up attacks as well. Once the opponent started respecting that, you had your overhead low 50-50, a fantastic corner setup that I used all the time. You could get very similar rewards with the homing missile, but the absolute on-disc version of Sektor's homing missile went up a lot higher before tracking, so you couldn't use it this way. I assume this was addressed in the day 1 patch of the game, because in older tech videos that I made, the missile definitely broke when it combined other buttons and it tracked earlier. Some of these things in the video might be pre-day 1 patch, so I will remark on when that pops up. Anyway, that's setup number 1, an armor-breaking mix that you had to hold. After the 1112 had its recovery lengthened in the next patch, I had to focus on other setup potential, as I was still playing him like a setup character thanks to his punishable gaps. It was at this point that I found this. Sektor's back 1 2+4 meter burn, when you don't actually combo off it, had this strange extended knockdown. Clearly some kind of bug, I think, but it means that you could specifically time an up missile and meaty once more with whatever you wanted. Once again, completely armor-breaking a wake-up attack, while at the same time enforcing a 50-50. Meterlessly comboing and spending your meter on the knockdown setup, you'd mix an opponent to death with precise timing. After the 1-1-1-2 had its knockdown lengthened, which did happen quite quickly, I might add, this was the next go-to guaranteed setup. Keeping things guaranteed was the key factor. I should mention that I couldn't recreate this in modern quality, as in the pre-Day 1 patch version on disc, Sektor couldn't actually meter burn the overhead string, so that must have been added once the public had proper access. But I had to end this variation with a bang. Probably the most notorious feature the character had that made Sektor in this version busted when it comes to zoning. Up missiles had insane hit stun, to the point where you could see them land, go downstairs, make a cup of tea, come back, and still combo off them into a full conversion. Any kind of decent reaction would let you see it hit and then confirm. Mid-screen, you could just hit run into anything, but even at the absolute fullest of full screen, instant air teleport would always pick up and allow for an extension. Braindead didn't even begin to describe this move because you could quite literally just spam it out without thinking, and on hit, you get a full combo anywhere on screen. Absolute madness. This didn't exist for long, by the way. It was removed around the same time 1-1-1-2 got nerfed. But that's the general idea of Sektor and the journey that he had. Not as strong in the neutral, thanks to gaps being more punishable because of launching armor, however, way more setup heavy. Armor-breaking 50-50s and weird extended knockdown setups, you'd zone like your life depended on it and then mix them up with basic 50-50s. I really enjoyed this version of Sektor, arguably more than I do now because I love setup characters. It's why I use so many homing missiles in the current version. That and its hilarious brutality.
Survival is a problem.
Boy oh boy, Cyber Sub-Zero. Some people thought Cyber Sub in this game would have maybe been an afterthought or rushed or whatever. Nope, not the case at all. In the first proper playable version of Triborg, Cyber Sub-Zero was arguably the best variation of the four. It's always going to be up for debate, but holy crap, this character was a beast for a small time. Remember that in current MKX that Cyber Sub isn't the most amazing in the neutral, but he thrives off corner mix-ups specifically? Pre-patch Cyber Sub-Zero was a beast everywhere on screen for so many reasons. First of all, dive kick was significantly harder to punish. It wasn't totally safe if used at a high angle and the opponent had a fast advancing button, but if you used it at typical dive kick range, where you hit it a bit lower to the ground than normal, it was safe on block most of the time, so this somewhat free poke when spaced properly was irritating to the next level. It's also an overhead, remember, so it does keep you on your toes. Secondly, and this was huge for him, Ice Ball was insane and much faster meterlessly. You could convert into it off more attacks and, crucially, his overhead or low would convert into Ice Ball at any range, which was ridiculous considering the back 1 and the back 3 were faster in this version, giving the threat of meterless full combo overhead or low mix as long as you were at close range. Speaking of back 1 being as fast as it was, Cyber Sub could actually combo into the back 1 2+4 after a few hits and meter burn the freeze for a restand if you didn't freeze them beforehand. Set up a free drone and then enforce a free overhead low 50-50. The mix is real because of Ice Ball connecting from max range off both low and overhead options. You punish them with back 3, the mix-up can come at any time. But if we're talking mix-ups, we have to touch on exactly what made this Cyber Sub-Zero version such a threat, and probably the main reason 1-1-1-2 got nerfed the way it did down the line. (1-1-1-2) against an airborne opponent was an absolute treat for Cyber Sub's corner mix-up. You easily had enough time to do a close bomb and set up whatever mix you want, and you'd have time to do it. The knockdown frames were lengthy. The mix after bomb is as follows. Overhead. Low. grab. Down 3 into overhead low. The list goes on for mix-up potential, and it's all thanks to the knockdown frames of 1-1-1-2, giving you a true situation that didn't require a read on your part for how the opponent may try and slip out of it, like nowadays. Every correct mix-up did chunky damage into the exact same situation again, essentially a Summoner Quan Chi level of vortex. This mix-up alone made the community extremely wary of Cybersub at an early stage, and the 1-1-1-2 was quick to be adjusted, almost exclusively because of this Cyber Sub-Zero mix-up, a lot of us thought. This character had all the mobility and range of current Cybersub, but the damage, conversion potential, and especially the mix-ups were in complete overdrive. The corner carry of his combos meant that you always get put in that situation, and the meterless blender of death must have been seen as a little bit too powerful. Combine all of this with a faster ice ball that converted off realistic situations, and he had you right where he wanted you off almost any touch. An insanely strong character. Smoke has honestly been a really interesting one if we're talking about revisiting the variations based on what we know now. A lot of modern Smoke setups and combos and general gameplay is kind of no different at all, but there is a reason for this. Back when Triborg first came out, nobody was talking about this variation. Sektor and his weird setups and up missiles being as busted as they were, Cyber Sub-Zero and the stuff that I just went over, and Cyrax stuff that I'll go into after this, was all super extreme and out there. It caused Smoke to go a little bit overshadowed, to the point where, in the forum days, some people really thought that he wasn't all that impressive. The big difference early on was that meter burn Smoke Bomb was +8, sometimes +10, instead of +5. A lot of plus frames to work with, as you'd expect from +8. Additionally, Triborg universally had his standing 3 be +29 on hit, so Smoke, after every restand, could set up a completely free mix-up, utterly impossible to challenge, because you'd just end the combo in standing 3, right? And then mix into whatever you wanted. Remember that back 1 and back 3 were faster in this version than the current version. And the final note here is that there was less damage scaling in general mid-combo from things like Smoke Bomb, Smoke Port, Phase Away. It wasn't by much, but it was more damage than he does now. The weaknesses a lot of the community voiced concerns about were seen to be the following. This one is completely understandable and was very much an issue in this version of the game, but armored launchers interrupting a lot of his pressure was a lot more punishing because, at the time, he'd get launched trying to go for his pressure. This definitely hurt the character, there's no getting around that. Too meter intensive. A lot of Smoke's game plan around Smoke Bomb plus frames, meter burn teleport, or meter burn smoke away. It all depends on how much meter he has, so he never has it for things like breakers, for example. Everyone was understandably comparing his meter usage to Sektor not spending much bar for anything, really, Cyrax for sure, and Cybersub getting all of his stuff for no bar as well. People definitely saw Smoke as being, without question, the most meter-intensive version. Here's where things got a bit weird, though, for me at least. If he kept his mix-ups meterless, he didn't do much damage. But, you know, the mix-ups that were a guess-based vortex. This one. Oh, this one though. His reversal game is really bad because you can throw his phase away or read it. But, you know, the move that is totally invincible against most things, and it meant he could totally slip out of moves, launch you, and then put you back in that guest-based vortex. Certainly more than one person actually considered his phase away to be a weak defensive option. It always blew my mind how downplayed this move actually was just because you could throw him out of it. It was very narrow-minded to only talk about that move in context of Wake Up alone. It was always insanely versatile for slipping out of pressure and other examples. Kind of ridiculous in hindsight. Fundamentally, Smoke had some troubles that definitely hurt him a bit more in that version of MKX because of armored launchers running wild. That makes total sense. However, smoke back then, on a basic level, was still very much the smoke that we know now. The vortex, the combo paths, the evade potential, the confirmable mid, the invisibility, the conversions, the utility in general. It's all there. It was all there straight away. Smoke, simply put, went majorly under the radar, and instead of his greater tools being celebrated, was actually a character either forgotten about by some, or said by others to be mid-tier character at best. Smoke was hilariously misunderstood at the time, in my opinion, and revisiting old posts about the character certainly hasn't helped that. But it does mean there wasn't much mechanically to revisit here. Smoke was still smoke. And finally, Cyrax. There's a reason I left this character till the end. Cyrax only had a few differences early on, but it was enough to make the character far more dangerous than he is now. Scaling was a big one. Combos did more damage in general, which is always going to help a combo-heavy character like Cyrax. However, the most significant difference was that after a bomb connected, net could still be comboed into. This means if your bomb mix-up works out, you can net the opponent afterwards without it misfiring, and loop the enemy into more mix-ups. The most notorious setup, and the one that without question made the forums go absolutely mental, was the low bomb into meterless back 2, as it's an overhead low hard to block that would launch you both ways. Air net after each setup means you can loop it for no meter. The thing is, I wanted to see what a Cyrax player with 4 years of experience with the character could do with pre-patch Cyrax mix-ups. And thanks to my brother having all of the same recording equipment as me over at his place, he was able to record this for me. Take it away, Mustard. As you can clearly see, 4 years worth of setup and combo optimization makes Cyrax leagues more insane than we ever knew back then when he first released with our limited combo ideas. Understandable because he was brand new and everyone was figuring out the Borgs back then, but to put it simply, here's what's going on if you played it now. Cyrax could bag pretty much 50% off every single touch, so long as he uses meter burn air grab. Being able to net after this, even if a bomb goes off, allows this damage every single time, but it leads into even more setups that are more devastating than the commonly used back 2 low bomb, as back 2 low bomb uses up your NJP juggle, so the neutral jump won't work. But the neutral jump ends up leading to more ridiculous mix, whether it's a low, an overhead, a grab. This character deletes your health bar, and if some of these setups hit, it's a legit 2-touch to kill sequence. Finally, if there was one thing Cyrax did better than any of the variations, even after all of the nerfs, it was armor break. Mustard worked really hard back then to find a bunch of armor breaking setups that would crush wake-up attacks and loop into more combos. It was something that Cyrax was very reliable with, even after some of the changes that he received. This wouldn't last long either though, because the final patch of the game gave most wake-up attacks multiple hits of armor to trade off the fact that most of them don't launch. So, unfortunately for Cyrax, these setups mostly don't work anymore. This was a major hit to the character, and he's never been quite the same pick since. However, Cyrax in the early version of the game is completely and absolutely broken beyond belief. I do want to thank Mustard for sorting out the game his end and sending me his lab results, because there was no way I was going to both find and execute all of that stuff. I'm not the Cyrax player at all. And so, the early journey of Triborg came to an end. Every variation, in some way, was running rampant online, and it kinda seemed like this character was ridiculous in some form across every single variation. The missile setups and zoning of Sektor, the corner demolition of Cybersub, the armor break and touch of death factor with Cyrax, or the evasiveness and vortex of smoke. The thing is, there was a rather notorious patch, 29th of March 2016. It was made to mostly address the DLC characters. Funnily enough, right before Mustard and I travelled to Scotland for a major UK tournament, planning to go Cyrax and Sektor all of the way with the tech that we'd developed, then the patch notes went live. Forward punch is now plus 12 on hit, down from 19. Forward punch is now plus 9 on hit, down from 19. Forward punch is now plus 15 on hit, down from 17. Towards forward punch is now plus 13 on hit, down from 20. Back punch is now plus 14 on hit, down from 19. Towards forward kick is now plus 15 on hit, down from 20. Back punch forward punch is now plus 17 on hit, down from 24. Back punch forward kick is now minus 1 on block, down from minus 6. Forward kick is now plus 12 on hit, down from plus 29. Away forward kick now has 15 startup frames, up from 11. Down forward kick is now plus 12 on hit, down from 18. Back kick is now plus 12 on hit, down from 17. Triborg Cyber Sub-Zero towards back punch will no longer sometimes be missing its hit regions when cancelled into a run. Ice Ball now has 26 startup frames, up from 21. Reduce the stun frames on Ice Ball by 13. Doing drone summon while in a combo adds some combo damage scaling. Doing dive kick while in a combo adds some combo damage scaling. Doing dive bomb or hover bomb while in a combo adds some combo damage scaling. Net and advanced net will now misfire out if a bomb or hover bomb has hit in the same combo. Shrapnel port now has armor. Nice. Reduce the stun frames on net and advanced net by 30. Hover bomb will now misfire after 3 hover bombs have hit in the same combo. Bomb will now misfire after 3 bombs have hit in the same combo. Adjusted back punch, forward punch, back punch to prevent all 4 hits from being forced to block against some character. Reduce the initial damage of Smoke Cloud and Smoke Bomb by 2 and increase the drop damage by 2. Doing Dissipate and Evaporate while in a combo adds some combo damage scaling. Doing Fade Port and Smoke Port while in a combo adds some combo damage scaling. Smoke Bomb is now plus 5 on block, down from plus 8. Will no longer be invisible for some frames while 2 and 1 cancelling away back punch, forward punch, or towards back punch, forward punch into some background interactions. Oh yeah, and Mustard beat me for top 8 in that tournament.